by scratching the surface, you get a terrible shock. It's it's a heinous crime. People are so shocked by what...
Queen Camilla entered the palace, expecting to review the future of one of the monarchy's most influential charitable institutions. Instead, she was met by staff, a closed folder, and a sentence that shattered the authority she believed she possessed. Her name had not merely lost the vote. It had never appeared on the ballot. Within moments, the Queen pushed back her chair, demanded an explanation, and stormed from the room. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla did not speak at first. She stared at the papers as the chief secretary explained that the Royal Foundation, the charitable organization directing royal charitable work, had completed a private vote to choose its next executive royal chair. Catherine had received 6 votes. William had received 2 advisory votes. The Queen had received none, because the trustees had never approved her as an eligible candidate. The silence wounded her more than the numbers. This role controlled strategy, partnerships, priorities, and millions in commitments. For Camilla, it promised influence beyond ceremony. For Catherine, it placed the Princess of Wales at the center of the monarchy's future public mission. The decision shifted power. Camilla tightened one hand around the table's edge. "Did Charles know?" she asked. No one answered quickly enough. The king had been expected at the briefing, yet he had withdrawn 40 minutes earlier. His absence felt deliberate, as though he had chosen distance when the blow landed. The chief secretary tried to continue, but the Queen pushed her chair back so sharply that it scraped across the floor. She warned that no institution carrying the royal name could exclude the sovereign's wife without consequences. Then she turned toward the door. Camilla stopped when she noticed the authorization page. William's signature sat beneath the trustees' decision. The prince had not merely heard about the vote. He had helped formalize the process that kept her outside it. She gripped the brass handle, turned back, and asked, "Who decided I was unfit even to be named?" No one looked at her. The folder bearing Catherine's name remained open in the Queen's empty place as she walked out. Only after the door closed did one staff member lean toward another. In a recorded internal account preserved by the Foundation secretary, the aide whispered that the exclusion had not begun with William, Catherine, or the trustees. It had begun months earlier, with a confidential warning from inside Camilla's own office. But to understand why the palace allowed that chair to remain empty, the private fears behind the vote had to be exposed. The Foundation vote was never a simple contest between 2 royal women. It was a collision between competing visions of the crown, and everyone involved understood that the damage would reach far beyond one chair. For Camilla, the role represented legitimacy after decades of judgment. For Catherine, it represented duty without spectacle. For William, it tested whether the monarchy's future could still be protected from private influence. And for Charles, it threatened to turn his wife and heir into opponents inside his own household. Camilla had carried the weight of public hostility for years, and she believed the Foundation position would finally prove she was more than the king's companion or a ceremonial consort. The chairmanship meant control over charitable priorities, senior appointments, and the public mission attached to the royal name. In her mind, it was the last recognition still denied to her. Losing it would hurt. Being excluded from consideration felt like a rejection of everything she had endured to reach the throne. Catherine approached the same institution differently. She never campaigned for the role, never pressured trustees, and never treated the appointment as a reward. The princess saw the Royal Foundation, the organization that coordinates major charitable projects connected to the younger royals, as an extension of years spent supporting childhood development, mental health, and vulnerable families. Her refusal to seek approval only strengthened the board's confidence. She appeared willing to serve without building a private court around herself. William understood exactly how Camilla would read the decision. The prince sat alone with the authorization document for nearly an hour, turning the final page back and forth before signing. He knew the act could wound Charles and permanently damage his relationship with the Queen. Yet refusing to sign would suggest that family pressure mattered more than the trustees' judgment. Charles felt the same fracture from the opposite side. The king read the eligibility memorandum twice, placed it face down, and told his private secretary that he could not order a charitable board to reward someone simply because she was married to him. He wanted to protect Camilla from humiliation, but he also knew why the trustees feared her involvement. Sophie received a private call from Catherine on the morning of the vote. The trusted confidant warned her not to attend the count, explaining that Camilla might see her presence as proof of a coordinated family attack. Catherine listened, then agreed to remain away. The princess accepted the chairmanship on one condition. No announcement would celebrate her victory over another royal, and no statement would mention Camilla's exclusion. She understood the pain before the result became public. Then a palace aide found the draft speech. Charles stood at the window, holding pages prepared inside Camilla's office. He read the line, "As your new royal chair," slowly folded the speech in half, and locked it inside his desk. He did not destroy it. That premature declaration was more than confidence. It was the final echo of an earlier confrontation that had already pushed the trustees beyond retreat. Months before Camilla stormed out of the foundation briefing, a private working lunch changed everything. There were no cameras, no public speeches, and no ceremonial smiles. Only trustees, handwritten proposals, and one demand that crossed an invisible line. What happened in that room was quietly buried to protect the crown. Yet every person later involved in the vote would remember it as the moment Camilla stopped appearing like a possible leader and began appearing like a threat. Camilla arrived at Kensington Palace expecting cooperation. The meeting had been arranged to discuss the Royal Foundation's next funding cycle, meaning the period in which trustees decide which charitable programs will receive money and support. Instead of offering suggestions, the Queen instructed the board to redirect a major family welfare fund toward a new literacy campaign managed by 2 advisors from her private household. The board chair resisted immediately. He explained that the money had already been promised to Catherine's early childhood program, which supported families who had planned services around that commitment. Camilla refused to accept the answer. She insisted that her position as queen gave her the right to reshape any initiative carrying the royal name. The chair answered with equal firmness. The foundation was governed by trustees, not palace rank, and no consort could overturn approved charitable commitments simply by demanding it. His words changed the atmosphere. What had begun as a disagreement over funding now felt like a test of control. Catherine waited until the lunch ended before asking to speak with Camilla privately. The princess kept her voice calm as she explained that canceling the program would abandon parents and children who had already been promised support. Camilla dismissed the warning. She told Catherine that she needed to understand the difference between personal projects and the wider priorities of the crown. William heard the raised voices from an adjoining office and entered before the exchange could grow worse. The prince told Camilla that his wife's work would not be dismantled to create positions for private advisors. She turned on him instantly, accusing him of treating her like an outsider despite her marriage to Charles. The real danger emerged after everyone left. The foundation secretary prepared detailed minutes of formal written record of what had been said, including Camilla's warning that resistant trustees could be replaced. Those pages were sealed inside a confidential governance file and later became decisive evidence when her ballot eligibility was reviewed. Then the betrayal came from within. One of the Queen's senior aides contacted the foundation chair through a recorded private call and warned that Camilla's office had already prepared lists of preferred replacements. The aide feared she intended to bring the organization under personal control. Catherine gathered the abandoned papers and noticed several trustee names crossed out in red ink. William saw the markings over her shoulder and understood that the dispute was no longer about one program. That same evening, he discovered Charles had been told everything and had chosen silence. When the sealed minutes later resurfaced, Camilla demanded to know who had used that lunch against her, and William finally entered the room to answer. Camilla did not go directly to Charles after leaving the staff briefing. She went to William. The prince was waiting in a smaller palace drawing room, with the vote papers placed between 2 empty chairs. There were no secretaries, no lawyers, and no advisors to soften what followed. When the Queen entered, William closed the door himself. One of them believed the crown had betrayed her. The other believed he had finally stopped her from taking something that was never hers. Camilla placed the eligibility memorandum in front of him and demanded an explanation. The document was the formal review used to decide who could appear on the ballot, and its conclusion had cut her out before a single vote was cast. She asked why he had authorized a process that refused even to consider the sovereign's wife. William kept his voice low. He told her that he had not removed her from an approved ballot. The trustees had reviewed the foundation's governance record. examined the confrontation at Kensington Palace, and concluded that she had failed the independence requirements. Only candidates who met those standards were included. Camilla heard judgment, not procedure. She accused him of waiting years for an opportunity to reduce her standing. The Queen said the vote had never truly been about charitable rules. It was about Catherine replacing her in every space that mattered: public loyalty, institutional power, and the future direction of the monarchy. William's restraint began to crack. He warned her not to turn Catherine into the villain of a decision she had not arranged. The princess had earned the trustees' confidence through years of work, he said, while Camilla had entered the process with a victory speech already written. That single sentence struck harder than any accusation. The prince then slid a second document across the table. It was the internal warning submitted after the Kensington lunch, a written account from one of Camilla's own senior aides. The report claimed that her office had prepared replacement lists and intended to bring the foundation under personal control. William refused to identify the aide, but he confirmed that every major detail had been independently checked. Camilla dismissed the warning as betrayal. She insisted Charles would overturn the decision once he understood how the process had been used against her. William did not answer immediately. Then he placed one final page beside the others. The king had reviewed the ballot procedure and signed a non-interference statement, meaning he formally agreed not to pressure the trustees or reverse their judgment. Charles had signed it 2 days earlier. Camilla lifted the statement with both hands. Her eyes stopped at his signature. She set the paper down with unnatural care and looked directly at William. "You allowed me to walk into that room without knowing. He was supposed to tell you," the prince replied. Her anger vanished into silence. She left not to challenge William again, but to confront her husband. The deepest wound was no longer Catherine's victory or the prince's signature. It was the possibility that Charles had protected the institution by sacrificing his wife's trust. Charles had spent much of his life defending Camilla against judgment from the public, the press, and members of his own family. Yet when she entered his private study holding the document that excluded her, the king did not rise to defend her. He remained behind his desk, surrounded by papers he had already read and decisions he had already made. For the first time, Camilla saw that her husband's protection had reached a boundary marked by the crown itself. Camilla placed the signed statement before him and asked why he had kept silent. Charles answered carefully. The royal foundation was not his private possession, even though it carried the family's name and worked closely with the palace. Its trustees had legal and ethical duties, meaning they were responsible for protecting the charity's independence, rather than obeying royal preference. The Queen demanded to know why he had abandoned the briefing. Charles admitted that he withdrew because he expected her secretary to prepare her privately before the decision was announced. He feared that his presence would turn a governance matter into a marital confrontation in front of staff. Instead, his absence made the humiliation feel planned. Camilla's voice hardened. She reminded him that she had stood beside him through decades of hostility, scandal, and public rejection. She said he had repaid that loyalty by allowing William's signature to become the face of her exclusion while hiding his own approval behind palace procedure. Charles did not deny the pain. He denied her conclusion. Loyalty, he said, could not require him to pretend the Kensington Palace confrontation had never happened. Threatening trustees and preparing replacement lists had made intervention impossible. Defending her after that would have placed their marriage above the institution he had sworn to protect. The deeper truth had already reached Sophie. In a documented private meeting, the trusted confidant learned from the board chair that neither William nor Charles had controlled the decisive vote. An independent governance committee trustees, responsible for enforcing the foundation's rules, had unanimously restricted the ballot before either royal man signed anything. Then the king revealed what Camilla had not been told. The trustees had offered her a separate literacy patronage, with its own funding, staff, and national campaign. Her office rejected it because the role carried no executive control. The refusal exposed what everyone feared. This battle was not only about charitable work. It was about authority. Charles removed his glasses and reached toward her, but Camilla stepped back. His hand remained suspended above the desk before slowly falling. She pressed her wedding ring against the non-interference statement without removing it, forcing him to see the personal cost of the decision. If Catherine represents the future, she said, then this palace must explain what place remains for its queen. By the following morning, that private wound had begun spreading through offices, schedules, patronages, and loyalties across the royal household. The palace attempted to continue as though nothing had happened. Briefing folders moved, cars departed, and public engagements remained on the calendar. But behind every ordinary action was a new uncertainty. Would Camilla cooperate, retaliate, or withdraw? Staff who had once treated her future authority as inevitable began revising plans without her name. Catherine prepared to accept a role she had never publicly pursued. And Charles discovered that one signature could alter the emotional geography of an entire household. Foundation staff acted first. They removed Camilla's advisors from upcoming strategy meetings and transferred every chairmanship briefing to Catherine's office. The princess received a secure folder containing the 5-year charitable plan, a schedule of urgent decisions, and a list of trustees now waiting for her direction. The change mattered because control of those briefings meant control of the foundation's future. Camilla was not simply losing a title. She was watching influence move elsewhere in real time. William asked the board to delay its public announcement for 24 hours. The prince hoped Charles and the Queen might reach some private understanding before the news became impossible to contain. Yet the pause only deepened the tension. Too many staff members knew the result, and every unanswered phone call carried the threat of a leak. Catherine sat alone with the appointment letter and left the trustees' champagne unopened. When Sophie called, the princess admitted that accepting the position no longer felt like recognition. It felt like stepping into a room from which another woman had just fled. The trusted confidant reminded her that refusing the role would not heal Camilla. It would only reward the pressure that had created the crisis. The Queen withdrew further. She canceled a joint reception and remained in her private rooms while aides quietly rearranged the king's evening schedule. When one asked whether she would attend dinner with Charles, Camilla answered that the monarch had already chosen whom he wished to sit beside when the decision mattered. Then the household began to fracture. 2 members of her communications team requested transfers, fearing that continued resistance to the foundation would destroy their careers. One of them held copies of the prepared victory speech and the replacement lists created after the Kensington lunch. Those documents could turn private suspicion into public proof. Charles refused to strike back. When Camilla's secretary proposed reviewing the trustees' palace access, the king rejected it and ordered that no staff member be punished for taking part in the vote. He would not use royal power to avenge a personal wound. Catherine finally opened the folder, read the first page, and closed it again. She placed the chairmanship pen beside a photograph of the late queen and whispered that leadership gained through another person's humiliation could easily become poisoned. Then she called William and asked him to arrange a meeting with Camilla. No trustees, no courtiers, no institutional shield. That fear now carried Catherine toward the only conversation capable of changing the emotional direction of the crisis. Catherine entered Camilla's sitting room without William, Charles, secretaries, or security officers. She carried no vote papers and offered no rehearsed apology. The Queen stood near the fireplace, prepared for triumph disguised as sympathy. But Catherine had not come to defend the trustees or celebrate her appointment. She had come to say something no institution could say for her. She would not use the foundation chairmanship to erase Camilla, but she would not surrender it to preserve a false peace. Catherine asked for 10 uninterrupted minutes before the public announcement. The princess said she wanted Camilla to understand exactly what she had known, what had been kept from her, and why she intended to accept the role despite the damage surrounding it. The chairmanship meant control over the foundation's direction, but it also carried responsibility for families already depending on its promises. Walking away now would not restore peace. It would leave the work exposed. Camilla listened without softening. Catherine explained that William had informed her only after the eligibility committee completed its review. That committee was the group responsible for deciding who met the foundation's leadership standards. She had not contacted trustees, cast a vote, or asked for the Queen's removal. Still, she refused to pretend the confrontation at Kensington Palace had played no part in the decision. Camilla challenged that innocence at once. She said Catherine always benefited from appearing untouched, while others made ruthless choices around her. William fought the battles. Charles signed the papers. The trustees delivered the verdict, and the princess emerged with cleaner hands and greater authority. Catherine did not retreat. She admitted that silence could become its own form of power, and she accepted responsibility for not confronting the tension sooner. But protecting someone from consequences was not kindness, she said, especially when their actions had endangered charitable work promised to vulnerable families. Then the offer came. Catherine proposed a place for Camilla on a new charitable advisory council, a body that would guide major campaigns without controlling appointments or protected funding. The role would allow the Queen to lead national literacy work while preserving the trustees' independence. Camilla remained silent for a long moment. Then she admitted what no document had forced from her. She had crossed a line at the Kensington lunch. She had mistaken rank for trust, and believed becoming queen meant she would never again need permission to belong. She did not accept the advisory role immediately, but she promised not to challenge Catherine's appointment publicly. Catherine rose to leave, and Camilla stopped her. The Queen picked up the unopened appointment copy and handed it back. "Do not make yourself smaller because I wanted the chair." The princess accepted the paper. Neither woman attempted an embrace. Their agreement ended the private rebellion, but the outside world was about to interpret one photograph, one headline, and one empty palace doorway for itself. By sunrise, the secret vote had escaped the palace. The public did not receive minutes, legal explanations, or the painful conversation between Catherine and Camilla. It received a single image: the Queen leaving through a side entrance with her jaw clenched, while foundation staff remained behind the doors. Within hours, the photograph became a national symbol, either of an institution protecting its future, or of a royal wife discovering that a crown could not guarantee influence. The Royal Foundation formally named Catherine as Executive Royal Chair, the senior royal position responsible for guiding the charity's long-term direction. Its statement praised her years of work and confirmed that an independent trustee vote had decided the appointment. It said nothing about Camilla's eligibility. That silence protected her from an official rebuke, but it also allowed the public to imagine something worse. Charles approved a separate palace line affirming the Queen's continued charitable service. The king refused, however, to describe the result as a shared family decision. He would not pretend that everyone had agreed when the household had nearly fractured behind closed doors. The wording was careful, restrained, and painfully honest. Camilla faced the story alone at breakfast. She unfolded a newspaper and found the headline waiting for her: "The Queen Who Wasn't on the Ballot." Beneath it sat the image of her departure. She folded the page inward before Charles entered, hiding the words but not the wound. The monarch noticed. Neither of them mentioned it. Catherine encountered the opposite reaction. A crowd gathered outside Kensington Palace carrying signs that congratulated the princess and praised her leadership. She watched for only a moment before stepping away. The cheering should have felt like triumph. Instead, it sounded tied to another woman's humiliation. The pressure intensified that evening. During a documented national broadcast, a senior royal correspondent revealed that the exclusion had followed a dispute over charitable funds and proposed staff replacements. The report transformed the story. This was no longer framed as a private rivalry between Catherine and Camilla. It was presented as a judgment about conduct, trust, and control. Then came the moment no one expected. Camilla arrived at the Foundation's first event under Catherine's leadership. The Queen did not claim the central seat. She walked directly to the princess, shook her hand before the assembled press, and remained for the opening address. Catherine accepted the gesture without triumph, while Charles watched his wife take a place in the second row. One photographer captured the defining image: Catherine speaking as Camilla listened behind her, unsmiling but unwilling to turn away. By morning, that photograph had replaced the storming departure across the front pages. Rejection had become endurance. The monarchy had survived the vote, but survival alone could not define its meaning. The final verdict now depended on what each royal was prepared to surrender. The foundation vote did not remove Camilla's title, end her marriage, or drive her from royal life. It did something more personal. It revealed that becoming queen had not erased the boundaries between status, trust, and earned authority. Catherine accepted leadership without celebrating victory. William protected the institution at the risk of family peace. Charles chose duty over instinctive loyalty. And Camilla, after storming away from the truth, returned to face it without demanding that the truth be rewritten. Catherine formally signed the 5-year foundation plan and promised to protect every family program already approved. The document set the charity's long-term priorities, funding commitments, and leadership responsibilities. The princess also created the advisory council previously offered to Camilla, ensuring that cooperation remained possible, without weakening the authority of the independent trustees. Camilla accepted a defined place within that new structure. The Queen agreed to serve as patron of literacy and community reading, a role allowing her to promote campaigns and speak for national projects. She would have real influence, but no power to appoint trustees, redirect protected money, or restructure foundation staff. The boundary was clear, and this time, she accepted it. Charles faced her privately after the public event. The king admitted that he should have told her about the vote before she entered the staff meeting. Camilla accepted his apology, but she also confessed that the deepest injury came from realizing she had expected marriage to protect her from accountability. That truth hurt more than exclusion. William visited her soon afterward. The prince did not apologize for signing the authorization, because he still believed the decision was right, but he admitted that allowing her to discover the result from staff had been unnecessarily cruel. Camilla answered with equal honesty. He had been right about the foundation, and wrong about the manner. Catherine's appointment now represented something larger than one victory. The monarchy's future authority would depend less on rank and more on sustained public service. The trustees trusted her judgment because she had earned that confidence over time. Camilla's defeat carried an equally powerful meaning. It was not banishment. It was not revenge. It was a boundary. The crown could provide position, ceremony, and visibility, but it could not force independent people to offer trust. At the first advisory council meeting, Catherine found Camilla already seated beside the literacy directors, rather than at the head of the table. The queen moved her papers aside to make room. The princess sat down, and the work began without confrontation, apology, or ceremony. The vote marked the moment the monarchy chose earned trust over inherited expectation. Catherine emerged with authority, William with a heavier understanding of leadership, Charles with a painful lesson about honesty, and Camilla with something she had resisted for years, a role limited by accountability. She had entered the crisis believing exclusion meant defeat. She left it understanding that accepting a boundary was the only way to remain valuable beyond the crown. Royal status could open the door, but it could no longer guarantee the seat at the head of the table. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.